Hello, and welcome to the Media Copilot. It's a podcast that explores how AI is changing media, journalism, and content creation. I'm Pete Paschal, longtime tech journalist and founder of the Media Copilot, and I'm excited to bring you fascinating conversations with fellow journalists, media executives, and the people building how the business of news will work in inevitable AI future. Today, I'm excited to talk to Francesco Marconi. Francesco has been working with AI in newsrooms since before even algorithms were that big of a thing. He started doing this way back in 2011 for the Associated Press, where he helped the journalism industry take some of its first steps into the realm of AI. The work often involved taking highly specific data sets, so think earnings reports or sports statistics, and turning them into stories. Now, Francesco has his own company, Applied Excel, which is laser focused on using AI to find good, actionable information from real time data. The idea is to sift through the fire hose of incoming feeds, social networks, news websites, and a whole lot more so that reporters and analysts can zero in on the things that matter to them and much faster than ever before. In other words, it does the gathering part of news gathering. Of course, that brings up the somewhat uncomfortable question of what is the human's role in this world? And what's the best way to build an AI first newsroom around those humans? We get into it. I gotta say, it was amazing to talk to such a veteran of the AI media space. Francesco's been thinking about this stuff for a lot longer than most of us. And I hope you listen to the end, where Francesco reveals how he uses AI to stay productive in his day to day. And if you do enjoy the conversation, I'd love it if you could share it with a friend or a colleague. I'd also be grateful if you'd consider subscribing to the Media Copilot newsletter if you haven't already. Links in the show notes. Also, you may not know that the Media Copilot offers AI training courses for media and PR professionals. The first 2025 cohort begins February 4th. It's a 6-week course filled with hands on practical training on using AI tools to automate workflows, craft campaigns, and really just work smarter to get more done. Trust me, if you work in media and you want to dive deeper into AI in 2025, this is your ticket. You can learn more about the course and sign up at mediacopilot.ai. Okay, I'm done with all that. Here's my conversation with Francesco Marconi, CEO of Applied Excel. Francesco, welcome to the Media Copilot.
Thank you. It's great to finally be here
I
virtually.
know, long time in the making. Been following you for a while. I'm really excited to talk to you. Obviously, you've been working at applying AI to journalism for a long time, well before the current wave, the revolution that kind of started with ChatGPT. You worked at the AP for a good chunk of the 2010s. You were the R&D chief at the Journal, and then you founded your company Applied Excel in 2020. That's like the bullet pointed version of it looks like your last 10 or 15 years. But tell me about your path. How did you choose this path? End up working in journalism and media, but specifically about AI, perhaps when it wasn't quite so popular as it is today.
Yeah, I mean that's a great summary of the trajectory. Started at the Associated Press, working on a lot of the early news automation and deployment of AI at the time, the old school AI of natural language generation, which was very like template driven, with really the focus of scaling production in news coverage in areas like corporate and business and sports, which was really interesting. I'm sure we'll talk about the differences between the first generation of AI in the newsroom and now what we are seeing today. But then at the journal was sort of going a little upstream in terms of thinking about how to leverage machine learning, AI, in different computational techniques for news gathering. So really finding ways of developing tooling for the journalists to be able to find the signals, understand what they mean, and then eventually be able to break stories ahead of the competition. And so, long story short, my partner and I, he at the time was the automation editor at the journal. We thought that this way of thinking about AI, about machine learning, that is journalistic driven, meaning you care about um, detecting live data, so real time information that is always changing. You care about providing context, so trying to explain the so what, which maybe 3 or 4 years ago was really difficult to do. Now there's a lot of progress in that space that we'll chat in just a second. But also adding this layer of transparency and accuracy and sort of journalistic rigor. And in early 2020 or so, we decided to leave the journal and start Applied Excel with the purpose of um, building a new type of professional information company. And so that's where Applied Excel comes in. Today, we work not only with other information providers like Bloomberg and Associated Press, but a lot of the business is coming from providing this intelligence, this information directly to companies, hedge funds, and so on. So anyone that really needs information for an edge.
Nice. So I really like your perspective because a lot of people I talk to, have, I guess I would describe it as different KPIs they think about when they think about AI, like a lot of business side people are like, what is the value this is bringing, what is the, whether it's efficiencies or new opportunities. But you, at least, in the way you approach it, it sounds like you're really focused on that, if not just efficiency, but that I feel like that's almost dismissive of it, but it's really like getting the news gathering down to a point where reporters can just go faster because speed is life in a lot of these organizations. Bloomberg, you mentioned in particular, certainly.
Yeah, I mean, I
Um,
think the way I um, consider AI's potential is that it can bring a more scientific method to the practice of journalism. And what I mean by
hmm,
that is that the same analytical rigor or the same analytical standards that you'll see in areas like the financial markets, where you're evaluating the world through the lens of a signal, although finite and reduced in scope, is well defined, which is either index goes up or down, the stock um, price goes up and down depending on different events. Can you apply that same methodology to any other domain, even those domains that don't have an analytical numerical base at its core? And so, what this new generation of language models allow you to do is to take uh, data that has been historically qualitative. So, think about filings from the government or statements from companies or data on science and clinical development and quantify that. Um,
hmm,
Now, why do we care, or why should we care about the quantification of this type of information? Is that enables you to create baselines. So a lot of one of our big areas of focus is looking at the pharmaceutical and biotech space,
right.
specifically, developing new drugs, clinical trials, which is a highly complex domain. The only way of discerning whether a change in the data, so say a clinical trial or what a pharma CEO says, is that you need to have that frame of reference. And
Hmm,
so um, I don't want to reduce the value and the impact that journalistic expertise and humans bring
hmm.
to the table, but we are kind of creating the foundation for then journalists or analysts or investors to be able to make decisions effectively. And so,
Yeah, I think what you're getting at, and maybe just guide me if I'm on the rough path here, but it seems like the journalistic judgment is kind of at the end of a lot of information processing that has to happen before they can even judge the right thing for the right audience. You know what I mean? It's like big papers come out, all this stuff you have to sift through and find the nuggets essentially on what matters to your audience and what's going to move markets. And AI can handle a lot of that so that when it does get in front of the human, they're really only seeing the stuff that they need to think about, that requires some human judgment and input. Is
Exactly.
that fair to say what you're trying to do?
Spot on, because it's about reversing the process where how do you move journalism and just anyone dealing with information from being a reactive profession to being proactive. And so what does it mean to move that editorial lens upstream in the world of AI, specifically around the potential of agents, where um, rather than um, letting the AI run free and just purely make decisions on statistical metrics, you can embed AI agents with journalistic knowledge, and that's looking for very specific changes in the data that have a specific meaning. It could be looking for outliers, and so the way that, now jumping a little bit to what we are currently doing at Applied Excel, is to create a network of highly specialized agents that are performing different um, tasks that are informed by working with journalists. Some of them are sort of internal. Others are collaborating with journalists in other organizations. But if you
Hmm.
think about it, um, the large and foundational information companies of today, so Thomson Reuters, AP, Bloomberg, S&P, you name it, they all start with the same playbook. So you start hyper specialized. So in the case of Bloomberg, was bonds pricing. You you then become a early innovator in the technology of the time. So for Bloomberg was network computing. For AP was the telegraph, and so on.
Hmm.
And then you build sort of that differentiation on this very specific area of coverage. You leverage the technology, and then eventually you expand. The next major information company will be an AI first company.
Hmm.
Um, and, you know, there's a lot of, all of these companies that I mentioned have really important AI initiatives and are innovators in the space. And I have a huge admiration for all of these big players. But it's also important to acknowledge that creating an AI native company is completely different than implementing AI. And so that's also how, if you were to build a newsroom of the future today, you would first hire your editors that are specialized in certain segments. You hire your reporter, your beat reporters. Now the paradigm is different. We don't hire necessarily the beat reporters. We'll
Hmm.
uh, deploy AI agents. We work with a lot of human
Interesting.
journalists, and we hope to hire lots of journalists to basically be the instructors of these AI agents and then scale their knowledge. If you think about it, you walk in any newsroom and you talk to a beat reporter, they will have their own algorithms in their
Yeah.
mind. If I look at, if a CEO says this, it means X, Y, and Z. If I see a particular type of filing in some federal agency, I know that I have to look for X, Y, and Z. And so all of these heuristics, these blueprints, that's what's really relevant. And
Yeah.
I think the potential now with AI agencies to chain all of these thought processes together and bring that discoverability, or that um, filtering of information upstream, rather than being reactive when you get a
Yeah.
dump of documents.
I really like to zero in on something you just described, which is sort of like the structure of a newsroom. If you were going to build one today, this is comes up a lot in sort of people I talk to, and is it? Well, first, I'm going to ask you a straight question that people have asked me before. Um, who I guess in depending on how you define winning, but who will do better in the future? And I usually well, anyway, I'll just ask the question. It's like take an existing organization like a place like Bloomberg or AP or the stuff you talked about, and their adaptations to AI, or do you think building an AI first newsroom more or less from scratch today, would that be an easier path to building whatever sort of system you envision as sort of the newsroom of the future?
Well, Bloomberg is the best, financial information company in the world, and AP is the best news agency. And I think you know, uh, uh, they
You
will.
wouldn't bet against them.
I would not bet against them, and they have, proven over and over again that they can implement technology and be innovative and so on. Now, it's a completely different way of thinking about implementing AI within an existing organization, which was actually my old life, both at
Mhm.
AP and the Wall Street Journal, where the focus is on you have to break workflows. You have to think about ways of changing, things that are currently in place in a way like this creative destruction, and then
Yeah.
building something from scratch is the exact opposite, which all you care about is creating structure and processes and workflow. But you know, now let's take a hypothetical news company, traditional news company, none of not the ones we mentioned, some other
Yeah.
news company, and I think what would be um, a wise way of thinking about um, AI is that the resources that currently are devoted to the two last steps of production and distribution
Hmm.
should be reallocated to news gathering. Why is that?
Interesting.
Is because the most valuable thing, the way that we will be competing in the AI age, is for differentiated information, proprietary data. That's all upstream. The production of the stories, formatting, editing, optimizing distribution to other platforms, that's completely commoditized. So there were a lot of, just think about some of the key innovators in media in the last 10, 15 years, like players like BuzzFeed or
Hmm.
Axios or Vox. Those were innovators on the content, on the Axios with
Right.
smart brevity and BuzzFeed with listicles and quizzes and all of that. So that differentiation through uh, presentation is going to be really difficult to pull off. Like
Right.
AIs are able to do that. What will be the two areas of opportunity are sort of this highly proprietary way of sourcing data, um, highly specialized newsrooms in specific domains. So that's taking journalism in a completely functional area. I need that information to make decisions, which is the camp where I operate in. The other camp, which AI cannot touch, is the human storytelling. So it's like
Hmm.
the it's magazine featured journalism
Sure.
like The Atlantic. So journalism that has the function of you need that to connect with your own humanity.
Hmm.
And so I think you'll have this bifurcation of like highly functional journalism and highly sort of humanistic journalism. I think the companies that will be most challenged are the ones that are operating in the middle. For example, uh, the New York Times, which has
Hmm.
a functional component and a storytelling component. I'm sure they will figure out a way, but um, those are those are two different ways of operating in the AI space. But going back
Yeah.
uh, to your original question of how do you build or how is it different, it will a newsroom for AI first will be order of magnitude smaller, and it will overemphasize news gathering over production and distribution.
Wow. Okay. I like this. Wow, this is a great vision. So that's it's interesting. I talk about AI affecting the news process in similar terms. I sort of envision it as a pipeline. And when I talk about where AI can make the most difference, I always sort of say the two ends of the pipe, right? It's like, well, the news gathering and then the production and distribution. Like that's, and then the actual like story crafting, storytelling. For now, it's generally human driven. Um, and but I like what you said on top of that, similar observation that the reallocation of resources is really important part of this, and that the quality of your news gathering is going to matter a whole lot more because that's how we're going to
Yeah, because
differentiate.
although I'm saying um, focus on the news gathering, but the news gathering will have direct impact on the distribution and monetization.
Hmm. Yeah,
Well, um, machines are larger consumers than humans. So, in the sense that more information is processed by AIs than by humans in terms of like volume. And this
sure,
is
of
a
course.
generic statement. I don't have the data to back it, but
I think we all kind of understand that. Yeah, I
just
know
like
what you mean.
directionally. And so, if you think about how people will consume information, both professionals working at companies or investment firms, as well as us as individuals, the experience will shift a lot to these AI uh, assistants and bots and so on. And so there's going to be a lot of um, there's going to be a information environment in way of distributing, productizing, monetizing that is completely different than what we experience today. So, and what I believe will happen is that these systems like ChatGPT or Gemini or Perplexity or any new players that will eventually emerge, um, they will, in the back end, they will have to figure out a way of creating a economic ecosystem. Otherwise, it's not going to be sustainable. So I
Hmm.
think what we'll see is new models of monetization emerging. Right now, you have, AP just announced yesterday, or I believe yesterday, that they were partnering with Google for
Right.
showcasing real-time news on Gemini and lots of deals with OpenAI. That's the first iteration. That's the corresponding of in the dot-com era. Your digital strategy was to put a PDF of the print online. That's the course.
Hmm.
That's the stage where we are. Um, I think even 3 4 years from now, what we'll see is these AI systems operating as information exchanges. So when you're asking a question and the system has to retrieve an answer, it will look for the most computationally efficient way of retrieving that question. And so take the example, you are Gemini, you are asking a question about a lawsuit as an example, and you can choose from one segment of information that is like very concise, that tells you like here's how the company was sued, here's how much they have to pay, versus like this long analysis that is convoluted and maybe will have that information. The AI
Hmm.
will optimize the quickest path to information, and so that means that the content and the format and the structure of how you deliver needs to be different than sort of the inverted pyramid. It will be much more modular, much more structured. And on top of that, and this is kind of the analogy with SEO, you'll have to have high level of specificity and authority to be able to win that information exchange, almost like
Yeah.
programmatic advertising for information, where the publishers will get compensated for how often your insight is being served.
Yeah, this is that's it's a really good thing to zero in on. The whole idea of, I guess I kind of call it generally SEO for chatbots, and I think there's a few different acronyms people are trying to get caught on. It's such a brand new field, but The the thing I always sort of tell people when they ask me about this, how do I get an AI summary, or how do I get my information processed by a bot? I always sort of, well, back up like one step. Like, why would you want to? And I don't mean that to dismiss the idea. Like, I think it's certainly a goal that everyone's going to want to have, but it is a different way of thinking about content and how you monetize the content. Like, what is the opportunity both for audience and revenue? And right now, the audience, the both are kind of unclear, honestly. Like, because the audience one, like, people get the information but they don't click through, and the monetization, as you said, is very nascent right now. I like your analogy about the PDFs. That's kind of where we're at right now. We have these licensing agreements, which are fine, but it's for a select few big players, like your Bloombergs, like your APs, but like small to mid-sized publishers are so far shut out of it. Um, yeah, I really like a lot of what you're saying about this vision of the future. But we're still in the present, right? In other words, there's still a lot of sort of steps to get there, and some of them are painful. Um, just in keeping with what we're talking about right now, which is the information discovery and content licensing. Um, what do you see happening in the next couple of years? There's obviously multiple lawsuits about this, and they cover different aspects from training to inference and everything in between. What has to happen for us to get to that future where AIs can sort of process any content, and transactions are either made instantaneously or agreements are already in place to ensure that there is this smooth access? Because right now, for example, if you go to ChatGPT search and you ask about anything the New York Times has reported, it's not going to be in there, right? Which is something we're not really used to. Like, we're all used to Google processing the whole internet and giving us links. And this idea that you might have a partitioned set of information just by virtue of choosing a platform is a weird thing that's emerging. Maybe it's a blip. Maybe it goes away because of uh, judgments and lawsuits or agreements, or but I don't quite see the path, or maybe I do, but it might be different from what you see. So tell me what you see.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, news publishers are the originators of data. They spend millions of dollars on producing that information, and therefore they should be compensated for that. And so I think that's clear. I think that's clear for me and a lot of people with the same point of view. Um, there are there's these two models that you describe, which is one, you get paid for licensing your data, and for both training and then the rights to showcase that information. And then the kind of indirect model is lead generation, right? So you search something on ChatGPT, it links to the New York Post, and you go there and you capture the audience that way. I really think that for us to solve this, there are different ways of approaching it. There's the approach of like litigation. There's the approach of regulation, which is what Europe tends to focus on, and then there's the approach of business model innovation. I think will be a combination of all of these three. Now, the business model, it's difficult because it needs to be a seamless experience, in the sense that I think the value exchange, there needs to be a way of creating value exchange within the AI environment, meaning this idea that I surface your information as a provider, I'm the AI, you should be compensated. Sort of the Spotify moment for AI.
Right.
I don't know where these lawsuits will lead to, but I think it has. I think there needs to be like a new paradigm, and it doesn't need to be like something completely disruptive, but it has to be even an example, a way of monetizing and compensating everyone involved that is sort of a aha moment.
Hmm.
What does not work is if AI companies take the lion's share of the benefit of the AI revolution. For
Hmm.
an ecosystem, regardless of whether it's AI or media or the natural ecosystem, for it to be sustainable, all parts within that ecosystem need to be equally compensated or need to be compensated somehow. Um, and I think there's, although there's litigation, there's also very positive signs of you know uh, players like Google and OpenAI and others proactively working with publishers.
Right.
Um,
Let's switch to like one other part of the ecosystem, slightly narrower, which we're alluding to a little bit. When I would say like on the publisher platform side, because we're seeing a lot of publishers now experimenting with AI experiences on their own websites and platforms. So you have chatbots like Washington Post has their Ask the Post AI. We have Time AI. Um, there are spoken articles, even that's sort of a primitive, I guess, use of AI, but it's happening. There's what to what um what is the opportunity for publishers to invest in these experiences? Do you see them as a stepping stone to something greater? And who's doing it right? Who's doing something well for audiences in a forward looking way?
well, a lot of people are doing really powerful experiments. Um, One thing that I will say is more of a, this is my point of view, but I think there's the chat fallacy when you think about AI. Um, the You pay for a news subscription or you go to a website um, because you are paying for a filter. You're paying for a view of the world, um, and you're trusting that organization or that journalist or that content creator to analyze the world or bring you information in a certain way. There are certainly use cases where, um, for work or research, there's this two-way conversation. But I think the value of journalism is also to deliver and push information. And so, if you differentiate AI, um, AI push, meaning you're creating these systems that are looking for insights, giving you the insights that you didn't know about, versus a pull experience where you're required to converse. Um, I think publishers have a much higher chance of succeeding if they focus on push. There are many reasons, and so the journalistic practice, it's about finding that information that you did not know about, and that discovery that is crucial that now can be augmented with AI and bring it to you. While traditionally, tech companies have been really good at productizing and user experience and so on. Now, not saying that publishers are can't get the user experience right, but I think you need you need specialization. A
Hmm.
lot of the things that I admire are, uh, as it relates to the AI application in news. It's really around news gathering and discovery and data analysis.
Yeah.
There's amazing investigations from the New York Times and the Economist and FT that use AI and ML for finding things that would be otherwise impossible, and not only doing it in a like a one-off kind of gourmet journalism type of approach where you get a data dump and you analyze. No, like setting up systems to consistently analyze. So
Right.
those are the types of AI applications that I think are um, really powerful.
Yeah, I've
Um,
seen that too. I saw the Washington Post. They did an analysis of ads. I remember political ads, and they managed to do look at hundreds of them thanks to AI. And recently, you probably saw this, but there was an essay by the Bloomberg editor in chief, and he talked about how they looked at shipping and satellite data, and when ships were beside each other, you could tell they were transferring fuel or something like that. So that helped a big investigation on that. That's all well and good. I think everyone supports that kind of stuff. I think so often about the smaller newsroom that doesn't have that kind of resource, and think, well, wow, how can I get at least a piece of that? What is your advice to sort of newsrooms who want to be forward looking about tools like this, and want to be forward looking about how they think about their news gathering with AI? How can they do it? How can they invest? What should they start thinking
Yeah,
about, even if it is just sort of low hanging fruit?
yeah. I mean, the interesting thing is like these AI tools are being completely democratized, and so uh, it's really about, in my view, identifying what are the what are the I before trying to do anything like grandiose or highly complex. I think the immediate value of AI in newsrooms, in small newsrooms, for example, it's really around optimization and efficiencies and looking at the workflow. What are the things that are highly repetitive that can be, programmatically uh, done? And so, even if you look at ways that you can customize GPTs for doing different
Mm.
tasks, all of these autopilot search tools like Anthropic just launched. I can't remember the name, but
Oh, is it projects or no?
yeah,
Wait, that was a bit.
yeah. No, I think projects is from OpenAI, but
Yeah,
similar in the sense that you define a task. I need to research X, Y, and Z, and
right,
it does that on your behalf. Um, you know, Also, like the open source AI movement is really powerful. Of course, that requires more resources and knowledge, because you have to run those models on your side. Um, but the knowledge barrier is one thing, of maybe you're not you know um, exposed to the capabilities, but in terms of the cost and the access, I don't think that's too much of a concern. And I think, like,
right,
this podcast is an example of that. So it's something that is publicly available, people can learn. There's all sorts of organizations like the Landfest Institute promoting sort of deployment of AI at the local level. And so I think there's an ecosystem around supporting smaller newsrooms. I
for
would
sure.
say that the knowledge gap is more important to solve than the technical gap, because now things are, in a way, much easier to set up. You don't need, in some cases, you don't need to code. You just need to talk to the system.
Totally. Let's jump tracks a little bit. I just have so many things I'd love to talk to you about. And I know we're kind of rapidly running out of time, but I want to just zero in on one specific part of AI that causes no end of concern in journalism, but in anything that wants accuracy, and that's hallucinations, which seem to be inherent to the technology in a big way. And there seems to have been progress over the past couple of years at minimizing them, and getting AIs better at both knowing when you want accurate data, but also just making sure they can sort of check themselves. Um, how I feel like this is the thing that gets a lot of journalists super skeptical about it, and I also feel like it's a thing that just is kind of never going to go away, just because of the nature of the technology. So I know this is a big question, but honestly, like, how do you deal with that, both as a technical issue and also as kind of a cultural issue, if you kind of know what I mean? It's a
Yeah,
it's a
I mean, I
thing that
think
is just a reality in AI, it seems.
yeah, the cultural issue will always be there and persist, and that's a
Hmm.
good thing. The skepticism of journalism. That's why journalists are in a unique position to operate AIs. Um, Now, the technical question is really interesting, and in fact, that's what we have spent the last few years working on at Applied Excel, where I'm telling you, I'm in the business of AI and I'm in the business of generating information. If you combine those two things, that's a pretty risky proposition. If we get something wrong and we are, distributing to 350,000 Bloomberg users, or, our clients that are top pharma companies and hedge funds, if we get it wrong, we're out of business. So in a way, we were forced to innovate this process of um, removing hallucinations, which is the domain of fact validation. And so what we found was that we could create systems to maintain the AIs accountable. And there's a few things that I can share on that. So um, the first one is creating. If you're relying on AI to create information, one of the most important things is to maintain the ecosystem where you're getting the data from closed and vetted. One thing is relying on AI to, write a news article based on what's searching on the internet. The other is instructing the AI to analyze very specific sources of data that have been vetted for very specific sources of insight. So restraining the AI to operate within a closed environment of the source data, is it's trusted. It's from a government agency, or if it's from, an organization that has, a very reputable track record. Then you essentially create those guardrails by not letting the AI go outside on the internet where you cannot control.
Right.
Then the second thing is the same way that you can instruct the AI to generate an analysis. What we found is that we could reverse engineer that process to then say, okay, now AI, you're going to check each one of these statements and claims against the original source of data, that, by the way, is within a closed environment. And then if it everything checks off, great, you can push that information into whatever platforms you are distributing. If it's not correct, you have to flag it, and
Mm.
you have to explain why you found that inconsistency. And so now I'm talking about explainability, and not you hear explainability and transparency thrown around like in
Yeah.
concept, like very conceptually. Like very specifically, what it means is when you're using AI systems to fact validate, when you find the error, the AI needs to give you the error message that says this statement does not match because, this company is not based in this location, or the lawsuit was not on this date and the correct date is here and here's the source. That explainability is important because um, there are humans in the loop when you create these systems, not as bottlenecks that are reviewing every single piece of analysis or content, but to analyze the type of error. And
Mm.
so the editing process in programmatic AI information, it's not just looking at why did the AI make this mistake on this story. It's what's the category of error that the AI captured that I can eliminate if I properly instruct it. So I'll give you a very simple example.
Yeah, please.
So in if you're trying to calculate timelines of a project, so like how long does it take for a drug to be developed or for a new power plant to be built, you need dates. You need the start date, you need the the end date. In some cases, the data can come from Europe, can come from the US. But if you're looking at dates, the way you write dates in Europe is day, month, year, and here in the US is
Right.
month, day, year. And so the AI will make that mistake of miscalculating the time frame because it's using a European data as
All right.
data formatting. And so in that case, you instruct the AI to say if going forward, if you see, if you are pulling data, make sure that you are looking at the data from where the data is coming from.
Right.
So these are the processes like human in the loop and like the transparency and the programmatic fact checking. That's
Yeah.
in a way
So
you can guarantee accuracy, but the issue of accuracy will not go away just from a cultural standpoint.
that's a really smart example. I definitely see the idea of using explainability to not just correct errors like that, but to understand this category of error. As you said, it's like, oh, this is why it did it, and this is a thing that is going to recur, and we need to adapt our instructions to make sure it
Yeah,
doesn't. And I
because
guess
it's
there's probably hundreds, if not thousands, of things that you must identify all the time.
Yeah, and some
Uh,
of them you can do it programmatically, right? So the same
yeah.
way that you can, uh, you can then, not to go to meta, but in some of the output that we create, we have three cycles of fact validation,
Hmm.
where the first AI will check the output of sort of a validation, and then we'll run several cycles. The difference is with regular, so say you are an editor in the business desk, your reporter turns in their assignment and you're editing that particular piece and you say, this should be go here and you should frame it this way. In AI, the editor, as in like the AI, the human auditor, is looking at macro editing, meaning
Hmm.
how can you identify what is the class of error that I can solve by just looking at one example.
Hmm.
So that's the field of active learning, where you need
Hmm.
way less human input to create highly accurate systems.
And just one more question on this I assume you've messed around with reasoning models like OpenAI's O1 and O3. Are they a step forward in being able to do this kind of error correction in the system automatically just via AI?
Um, I mean, we've first of all, different models allow you to perform different analysis tasks, and some perform better than others depending on what you're trying to do. But in terms of these, while we are an AI company optimizing for something that is different than big AI. Big AI
Yeah.
is optimizing for AGI, meaning they need to have a comprehensive view of the world. The more data, the better. We are optimizing AI for factuality. It's all different game, and so all of these models are you know amazing and sort of it's borderline magic, but we were forced to innovate in terms of building these internal tooling. So think about almost as a CMS to be able to deploy and test and fact check LLMs. And
Hmm.
so I only a few companies in the world like Google, OpenAI, Microsoft, Facebook, or Meta are in a position to play in the space of developing an LLM and be successful. The and in a way that's also becoming commoditized. I think what the big winners will be what I call the last mile of AI, meaning you take these foundational models and you productizing it in a way that it's something that the big AI companies are not able to do or not even remotely interested in doing. So,
Hmm.
the answer is you can apply the journalistic thinking and processes around transparency, accuracy, and many others to really build completely new ways of creating AI products.
Nice. So, I mean, we've been talking for a while now. I feel like I could go on and on about all kinds of things, but usually I end these conversations with something about visions for the future and being very forward looking. I feel like that's all we've done.
Yeah, that's all
So
we've done. So I think,
instead, yeah, I'm gonna zero in on today and yourself. I'm really curious how do you, as a guy working in AI, how do you use AI tools in your day to day? What do you go to?
I well, I use it every waking moment of my day. From um, you know, a lot of my work is like communicating and coordinating and sort of documenting things, and so I think that's um, that's very helpful, and I think AI can help us become all great communicators. Um, but more on the personal level, I like to use AI to simulate conversations.
Hmm.
Conversations with my kids, conversations with my wife, conversations with friends, with colleagues, and it just I think it can actually help you become more uh, empathetic if you are able to understand. Okay, what's the how would someone respond, and so you can go much deeper, and it's a really fun exercise. um,
That's really interesting. That's I haven't heard. I've heard of this, but it's like I haven't thought about it in quite the same way as you're sort of talking about it, almost like a rehearsal of
yeah, yeah, I mean,
running
a lot
something
of
by someone. I
people
love
use
that.
that for like interviews, and
Yeah,
I think that's a really cool use case. But um, how can I become a better father to a
hmm.
5-year-old? uh,
Yeah,
how can I be a better business partner? So like there's our human condition creates biases by default, and it's interesting that although AI is very biased, it can help you see your biases. So
hmm.
that's one way I use it.
I like that. Are they conversations? Are they generally typed or verbal or a mix?
It's I've been using a lot of verbal, where you basically set up a persona and then you can talk to it, but also conversational.
Yeah,
So
nice,
a fun
really
little
cool.
exercise.
Alrighty. Well, Francesco, this has been amazing. Thanks so much for taking the time, sharing your insights on the future of AI and journalism. I hope you can come by again and we can explore one of these areas even more thoroughly, or something else entirely.
Yeah,
Because
thank you
yeah,
for it.
I feel like we've left a lot on the table that we could
We'll
have
uh,
dove into.
we'll do another session in the near future. Thank you
That'd
for
be
having.
awesome. My pleasure. Thanks for listening to my conversation with Francesco Marconi. If you want to learn more about what he's up to, check out appliedxl.com. And if you like what you heard, please just take a minute to leave a rating or review for the Media Copilot in your podcast app. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Media Copilot newsletter and check out mediacopilot.ai for our courses on AI for journalists, marketers, and content creators. Be seeing you in the future.